Hey, what's up pups, it's JR, bringing you another Monster Hunter World video. Before we get into this, it's time for the obligatory apology at the start of the video for how I've not been uploading. I'll give you the abridged version so we can get directly into the video. Basically, the past week or so has thrown every single negative thing at me it possibly could, so I haven't exactly been in the mood to record anything. Gonna try and fix that and get back to work though, so here's hoping this is where things change for the better. Now, the last video I uploaded for Monster Hunter World was my 10 favorite monsters, and during that video I also mentioned I should make a video about my least favorite monsters. However, I was playing just a little while ago, and I thought it would be a better idea to talk about the monsters I like fighting the least, instead of just making a video that was the inverse of the last one I posted. However, the reason I play World so much is because I enjoy fighting most of the monsters currently in the game. So instead of 10, we have 5 and 3 dishonorable mentions. I'm also going to finish off each segment with a few tips on how to fight these guys effectively. They're all from a solo standpoint because that's how I play most of the time, so if you're a solo player like me and have a hard time with any of these monsters, I suggest watching each segment until the end. So with that said, sit back and join me as we hop right in to the 5 worst monsters to fight in Monster Hunter World. Kicking off the list is the monster that a good amount of my viewers were probably expecting would make this list. Basil Geese. The Basil Geese is a flying wyvern whose whole shtick is flying around like a B-52 bomber and dropping these highly explosive scales that dangle from its neck and tail. The reason Basil Geese is only here at number 5 is fighting it is annoying, but once you're well used to the game, it's really not that hard to fight, despite Basil Geese being a tyrant like Devil Joe. Now, the reason Basil Geese is annoying is most of its attacks involve the explosives in some way or the other. So if you're out of the way of the attack itself, like a tail swipe or a headbutt, there's still a fair chance you're close enough to get hit with the splash damage from the scales. And the fun thing about this is, the scales are technically fire damage instead of blast damage, so instead of inflicting blast blight, which is only really an issue if you get hit again before you can roll it off, you're instead giving the ticking damage of fire blight. Now, it's not that bad, seeing as how fire blight doesn't do all that much damage, but it's still annoying because it technically still does more damage than blast blight so long as you don't get hit again. Another annoying thing about these scales is, because the way Capcom coded how they deal damage, instead of dealing less damage the further you are from it like most splash damage attacks in most other games, it instead deals full damage so long as you're at all in range of the explosion. Now, these aren't the only aspects that make fighting Basil Geese annoying. The thing I find the most annoying about it is the CC effects of most of his common attacks. The scales exploding will launch you, as will his charge, his headbutt if you're hugging his flank will knock you on your ass, his head smash detonator will cause a ground tremor, as well as an explosion so long as he has active scales, and his short launch followed by a ground slam will also cause a large explosion around him, which is particularly annoying because the initial launch has wind pressure on it, so if you don't have wind pressure negation and you're running melee, if this attack catches you off guard, odds are you're getting launched or carded if you can't take the hit. And these are all attacks that you will see really commonly throughout the fight, so if you bring melee to fight Basil Geese and don't have knockback, tremor, or wind pressure negation, this is going to be a very annoying fight. The best way to fight Basil Geese I've found is to bring a bow, I use the Flying Kodachi Strike Bow due to his 3-star weakness to thunder, and keep a fair distance from him, taking any chance you can get to hit him with a Dragon Piercer once you run out of paralysis coatings. I usually start off the fight by paralyzing Basil Geese, then spamming the Rockfall arrow, which is easy to use. Just spam either right click, circle, or B depending on whether you play with mouse and keyboard, PS4 controller, or an Xbox controller. This does a fair amount of damage due to the power shot usually hitting all of the arrows it fires because of how massive Basil Geese is. However, the reason I spam the arc shot, which I call the Rockfall arrow because that sounds cooler, is because by the time the paralysis ends, if you hit most of the arc shots, the Basil Geese will be knocked out, so you can then follow up with either a Dragon Piercer or simply spam your normal shot for some concentrated damage on a body part if you're farming him. Girototus. This is not a hard monster, but holy ever-living Christ is it annoying to fight. The Girototus is a Piscean wyvern that I'm sure everyone who plays Monster Hunter World is well aware of. It covers itself in sticky mud and resides in the swampy areas of the Wildspire Waste. Similar to Basil Geese, this is not a hard monster to fight, and it's probably one step higher than a Great Jagras in terms of difficulty, but pretty much everything he does annoys me. He usually starts off the fight with either a mud spit or a quick hop away from you to either spit mud at you or roar, even though it's not powerful enough to stun you, so he's just kind of wasting his time and yours. The thing I find the most annoying about the Girototus is the hitbox for its head. It stretches from the tip of its snout all the way back to the base of its neck, for some fucking reason. Its tail hitbox is also just as bad, spanning from the tip to about just behind the small fin on its back. With the way Girototus moves and these hitboxes, this makes it exceptionally difficult to hit its body, or its chest, which you need to break if you want a Girototus fin from somewhere other than carves. However, equally annoying is how much he moves and how he moves. A lot of hops, slides away from the player, and a wiggle that should totally not be an attack but is, as well as being an attack that can toss the player. Super fun. With how odd a lot of its movements are, it's particularly annoying to fight him with a greatsword, which is the weapon I use the most when fighting him because of the high raw damage, making it easy to break his mud without using puddle pods or bringing a weapon to specifically get rid of his mud. Oh, and not to mention, his mud spit leaves behind a glob of sticky mud that will almost completely immobilize you, as well as drain your stamina bar fully if you try to dodge roll out of it. Oh, don't worry, if he hits you directly with the mud spit, it won't leave any mud behind. But oops, looks like you got water blight, so your stamina regenerates extremely slow, which is very annoying when fighting him with dual blades, hammer, and bow, and moderately annoying with gun lance and lance. That's cool. The final icing on the cake is the fact you will very rarely be able to get off your dismount attack whenever you rodeo the Girototus. Why is this? Well, it's simple. He's a fish with legs, yes, but he does not know how to use them at all. The Girototus is the least sure-footed monster in the entire game, so he gets knocked down really easily. He gets knocked over by getting hit by my Palico and Gajao more often than I knock him down with a dismount attack. His placement in the world makes it really easy to start off a fight with a mount, but there is an 80% chance that he will get knocked over before we have a chance to finish off the rodeo. All of this paired with the fact he's not even nice to look at puts him at number 4 on this list. Most of these points also extend to Lavasioth and the Elder's Recess, seeing as how they're basically the same monster except Lavasioth does substantially more damage. There is no wrong way to fight a Girototus. Bring literally anything along with a stack of nullberries and you'll be fine. If you don't have a particularly strong weapon, grab some water moss from around the swamp and shoot him with it when he's covered in mud to break it off. Number 3. Teostra, now in blue. Lunastra is an elder dragon who shares a lot of characteristics with her male counterpart Teostra, passively heating up as the fight progresses, dealing more passive damage to nearby enemies, as well as being able to inflict Blast Blight, which is very annoying with all the things that can tick you during the fight, even if you're not close to her. Pretty telling how I had a complaint when I was just describing her, huh? Most of her attacks hit a large area, and when she's heated up, her fire attacks will leave behind a burning patch for a short time. Fighting her solo is particularly difficult because, much like the Azure Rathalos, she does not relent when it comes to attacking. And with the thing I just mentioned, it's decently hard to avoid a fair amount of her attacks. Luckily, you can prevent her from using them by hugging her flanks because they're all ranged attacks, right? Well, yes, but she has a quick fire breath attack that she shoots to whatever side you're on. It doesn't do a whole lot of damage, but it does knockback, and it can inflict fire blight if you don't have 20 fire resistance. While it doesn't do a whole lot of damage, however, it can easily kill you just because of how fast you can use this attack. Most of the time I get killed by her is because I'm wailing on her side while she's doing another attack, then all of a sudden she turns her head and finishes me off because of the passive damage she has around her whenever she's heated up. Which, this is by far the most annoying aspect about her. It's not even a slight bit of damage, no, it's a lot of damage for being a tech attack, even with my fully upgraded Zora Gamma armor. Also, you know how the best way to deal with flying wyverns is to shoot a flash pod to blind them out of the sky? Well, you can blind Lunastra, but it won't knock her out of the sky. So, if you brought a melee weapon, which you should have because she resists rain damage on almost every part of her body, then you have no choice but to sit around like a dick and wait for her to get back on the ground. Finally, much like Teostra, Lunastra has a discharge attack to expel all of her built-up heat that does massive damage. However, this is not just a detonation like Teostra. She starts off with a heat blast that will ragdoll you if it catches you, then for around 5 seconds there is a massive area that deals consistent, constant, and massive ticking damage so long as you're in it. And if you're in it after around 5 seconds, then Lunastra detonates, taking away whatever health you have left. The only way to avoid this attack is to immediately run directly out at the moment you get the chance and stay out until you see her detonate. The best way I've found to fight Lunastra solo is with an Ice Gun Lance, but this is purely because Gun Lance is the weapon class I'm most comfortable with. I've not found any other way to defeat her without fainting other than bringing the weapon class you're the most comfortable with an Ice Element, taking advantage of a 3-star weakness. Insect Glaive is probably the best option due to its uncanny ability to cheese almost any monster, but I don't use Insect Glaive much, so I can't say for sure. All in all, Lunastra is an extremely annoying monster to fight, and to me, she has a similar visual issue to Girototus. Her color palette is nice, yes, but overall, her design is boring, as is Teostra's. Why? Because they're literally just manticores. That's it. Teostra is a red manticore, Lunastra is a blue manticore. It's really fucking boring. At least they didn't get the treatment their armor sets did though, so they're just boring instead of looking like complete shit. I hate this fat, stupid, pickle piece of shit. Deviljho is a massive brute wyvern, and the face of Monster Hunter when it comes to stepping into shit that you have no place in. Which is to say, Pickleman's whole deal is showing up when you're hunting a separate monster just to make the hunt that much more difficult than it already was. Basil Geese has the same role, but it's not nearly as annoying. I've been calling this type of monster tyrants, but I've more commonly heard invaders when referring to these two. I like the sound of tyrants better, so I'm just gonna stick to that. But JR, if what makes him annoying is him showing up when you're hunting something else, that means hunting him himself can't be that bad, right? Wrong. Deviljho's fight is one of the most annoying things in the game, hence why he's number 2 on this list. Monster Hunter veterans will probably tell you they love fighting Deviljho, but I chalk that up to it being the only monster that consistently puts up a fight. This is because, I say, a lot of the things he does have a fair amount of bullshit in them. The worst part being, this is intentional bullshit, for the most part. When enraged, his Dragon Breath attack and a few of his small bite attacks can inflict Dragon Blight, negating the elemental part of your weapon, effectively reducing your damage output. When sitting right next to him, he takes advantage of the fact he's a fat shit and causes a massive ground tremor that stuns you for way too long if you can't nullify or avoid it. When you're too far away, he'll either throw a rock at you that can inflict either Fire Blight or Water Blight if he's standing in lava or water, or jump directly at you from any distance, also inflicting a ground tremor. If you're on either side of him, but too far for his tremor stomp, he will body check at you, and if he hits you with any part of his body during the entirety of this attack, even the tip of his tail at the very end, it will deal full damage. This has carded me multiple times. If you get pinned and don't have flash pods, you're dead. And finally, even though you can hit him in his neck to knock him over like Anjanath, he's so purely massive that you cannot hit his throat 90% of the time. For this same reason, the only parts you can really hit him when running melee are his ankles, which, as you can imagine, doesn't do jack shit. The best way to fight Deviljho is to not fight Deviljho. Fight Deviljho with other people until you can get the weapon you want, then proceed to pretend he doesn't exist. He is awful to fight, looks stupid, and will continue to suck to fight because that's his job. Deviljho is fucking terrible, but goddamn if his weapons don't do a fuck ton of damage. Before we get to number 1, I want to get into some dishonorable mentions. First off, we have Valhazak. He is one of my top 10 monsters, and his fight is really entertaining, but farming him, specifically Fangs, is obnoxious, so he needs to be at least mentioned in this video. Similarly, we have Kushala Daora. Farming him isn't nearly as annoying, but wind pressure is super annoying, and that's Kushala's entire deal, but other than that, the fight is fine. Finally, we have Behemoth. Yes, he's actually part of the video this time. I despise Behemoth, but that's because I'm a solo player who is rather good at the game, but everything I like to use makes it so soloing him takes an extreme amount of effort. An amount of effort I'm not willing to put in to a monster that I don't like from a series that I don't like. So I'm stuck with trying it with other people, but most of the people who join in from an SOS flare aren't exactly the most capable players in the world. So while I'm able to survive a hefty amount of time, my teammates usually end up bleeding away our retries. I can probably solo him at this point. I can sometimes get through entire fights without getting hit, but I have everything from him now, so there's no point. The reason I don't like him doesn't justify me putting him on this list, because, let's be real here, he's a raid boss. You're not supposed to kill him solo. You're supposed to do it with other people. Having to rely on your teammates is part of his difficulty as a raid boss, and because of that, he's just a mention on this list. Now, on to number 1. Let's start this off right. Fuck Nergigante. Nergigante is an Elder Dragon, and the first one you'll fight that isn't Zora Magdaros, whose shtick is being an Elder Dragon whose diet consists of other Elder Dragons. I will preface this by saying that Nergigante is not the hardest monster in the world to fight, but I say he is the most annoying. As an elementless Elder Dragon, his kit relies on raw damage alone, so he does massive damage with most of his attacks. However, paired with his damage output, he also slowly grows quills on his neck and back, his forelegs, wings, and tail. These quills will turn what would be weak spots into spots that now resist your attacks. On top of this, if the quills on his back and both wings turn fully black, he will do his infamous insta-kill dive bomb attack. The hitbox on this attack is massive, and while the windup is slow, the attack itself is extremely fast, so you need to be on your guard 100% of the time once his quills start turning black. The only way to avoid this attack solo is to either tank it by blocking it with a greatsword, charge blade, gun lance, or lance, try to dive evade right as he starts to drop out of the sky, or use a flash pod while he is winding up. Keep in mind that he will be unaffected by flash pods when he is actually diving, so save your flash pods and yourself if you can't get it out before he dives. It should also be noted, him successfully diving sheds off all of his quills, so he'll be vulnerable once again. So it's a good idea to avoid or block the dive bomb instead of flashing him out of the sky. But if you absolutely will get carded otherwise, by all means, flash him. Now, on top of his damage output and building damage resistance leading up to a massively powerful attack with a huge hitbox, he's also extremely fast. During the fight, if you're playing with other people or hugging his flank, he will hop to a completely different spot in about a second. And he will do this a lot. Also, he has a shoulder check attack that covers a much larger area than you'd think, so don't run away from it, run directly to either side to avoid it. Overall, the things that annoy me the most about Nergigante are as follows. Triple threat of speed, defense, and strength, hitboxes much larger than they should be on his strongest attacks, his general spastic demeanor, his massive horns that realistically do nothing other than make him look worse, and I guess make it harder to damage his skull if we're giving him the benefit of the doubt. And finally, the thing that pisses me off the most, I really want to like him. Ignoring his ridiculous horns and his roars that sound more like a bellow or a burp than a roar, I like every other design aspect of his. I like the concept of his regenerative quills, I like his color palette, his Eater of Elders concept is awesome, and if I didn't have to deal with fighting him, I'd love the fact he's this unrelentingly powerful Elder Dragon. But he's so obnoxious to fight, he is currently one of the 2 monsters I've vowed to never fight again unless I absolutely need to. The best way I've found to defeat Nergigante is to specifically solo him and not bring your Palico unless totally necessary. This way he acts much more predictable, so you'll always be ready for things like his shoulder check and dive bomb. Then, I suggest bringing a hammer with thunder damage, because he has a 3-star weakness to thunder. A hammer is a good idea to bring because the first 2 areas you'll be fighting him in have slopes in them that allow you to throw a lot of hits with the hammer, making knocking him out, mounting him, and breaking his horns substantially easier. As a final tip, always bring flash pods and have them loaded into your slinger. They need to be on standby if you can't otherwise avoid his dive bomb. After getting B-roll for this segment, however, I have really warmed up to Nergigante in general. I still think his horns are just slightly too big and his roar is unthreatening, but overall, I really like his design. This segment was added after I went and recorded B-roll, so that's the reason if the energy is a bit different. However, because this fight is so extremely obnoxious, this easily puts him at the #1 spot for the worst monsters to fight in Monster Hunter World. Make sure to leave a comment telling me what you think are the worst fights in Monster Hunter World, or tell me how wrong this list is. Either works. If you enjoyed this video, consider dropping a like, and make sure to hit that subscribe button and become a pup if you haven't already. Also, if you want to support me in the channel, consider becoming a patron for as little as $1 a month, or even buy some merch. My name's JR, and I'll see you guys in the next one.